seems to not understand that if there's one person on earth who should care how these midterms shake out, it is Donald J. Trump, because he is the person, his family, the allies are the people who are going to his administration. They are the folks who are going to be getting investigated on January 3rd, 2027, if Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker. That's who should care the most.
Maybe
And
he
when you
knows
talk to
something we don't
Republicans,
know. Maybe
mhm,
they feel like they're not gonna lose in the midterms because
mhm.
he's doing everything he can to try to rig the elections and exert authority over our electoral process when he has none. Well, it's episode 19 and it's Juneteenth. Okay, greetings
Look
and
at
happy
that.
Juneteenth.
How did that happen? It wasn't us. It was Black Jesus. Thank you, Black Jesus.
Well, Jesus, by
Is black.
definition,
It say that.
Jesus is
Hair of
black.
wool.
He's from the
That's what it
Middle
say in the
East.
Bible. He was at least
Don't
brown.
let these movies fool you.
You know, these movies, all these
This
people.
is definitely
But
getting cut.
welcome back to Clock It. We're sure Iran and the Trump administration signed this memorandum of understanding that may or may not cease hostilities in the Middle East. I don't know. It seems it's not a deal, so we're not going to get that here.
Look, this is an aside, but the fact that this man is having a whole, by this man, I mean the president, is having a whole like signing ceremony for just a deal to stop fucking with us and
Yeah.
go back to where it was before so we can have a conversation is insane,
A
okay?
deal
Iran
of a deal of
still
a
has
deal for
nu-
a deal for a deal. Like
a deal for a deal for a deal for nothing,
Yeah.
okay? The
Yeah.
Strait of
Yeah.
Hormuz was open before and it didn't cost anything. And so now we're doing the signing ceremony to get back to where we were. It's insane. And also, Iran still apparently has nuclear capabilities, but what do I know? Apparently nothing. Well, I don't know, Eugene. That's happening. We're also
Moving
following the
on.
World Cup, okay? I have been tuning in to the socials
You are
about the World
lying. Oh,
Cup.
the
The
socials. Okay.
socials about the
Okay.
World Cup. We also know that Elon Musk is the world's first trillionaire. But there are also some other things we'd like to talk about on our show.
I'm gonna move on from that because I have lots of thoughts. We're gonna talk about the real and inclusive celebration of our country on its 250th anniversary and compare Juneteenth to what happened on the White House lawn on Trump's 80th birthday.
I'm sorry, I was confused. I was like, wait, are we having a real and inclusive celebration of our country
No,
on its
that's the
250th
problem.
birthday?
That's the damn
Okay.
problem.
Got it. Understood. We're also going to talk about pop stars. Eugene did a really great
Yes.
video
Thank
for our
you.
MS Now
I saw you like
socials.
my joke, my wicked joke.
I did. I commented in the
Very
chat. I'm
funny.
here to
Yes,
support
that was
you.
me.
We're
That
also
was
going to
me.
get into the celebrities who speak out against the abuses of the Trump administration. And we're going to compare that to those with big followings who are silent.
Mum's the word, apparently.
Silence is a choice.
And an answer. Silence is also an answer sometimes.
Ooh, I'm going to start saying that. Because I usually say silence is a choice, okay?
It's
But
also an
silence
answer.
is also an answer.
Mhm,
Ooh,
mhm,
I feel
mhm.
that viscerally in my soul. I need to take this to my
Yes.
therapist this week
Yeah.
for a number of reasons. Before we get into the silence of it all and the answering of the silence, can we talk about just a monumental and
Yeah.
a celebratory occasion? This week, Barack Obama's Presidential Center opened. It actually opened on Juneteenth. There was an opening ceremony that happened on Thursday, and then on Friday, the center is officially
Open to the
open to the public. It is a museum, but it also has a full-size basketball court. It has a branch of the Chicago Public Library. It also has a very big playground. There's also a restaurant.
Yes.
There's so many things. Let's look at President Obama and his playground.
You don't have stuff to do?
But I was gonna be okay.
All
right.
kid.
I love the dragonfly.
The dragonfly thing's super cool. That was one of the coolest
Dragonfly.
things. Hi, sweetie. How are you?
I
What's
wish
your name?
racism wasn't never a
Oh,
thing.
well, I'm sure it won't be. Thumbs up. All right. Well, you guys, we're going to let you get back to playing. Because, listening to me isn't all that interesting. Take care, everybody. Love you.
President Obama is so funny. Like, what?
Wait, that little girl said, I wish racism wasn't a thing.
President Obama was like, where y'all get these kids from?
I said, they are not from Central California. These are real children with real
These are
problems.
real
honey.
children. Whose Stafford's kids are these?
Oh my
I wish
gosh,
racism
that sweet
wasn't a
baby.
thing.
Baby, us too.
Time to
Us
go.
too. Yeah, exactly.
He's
Okay,
like, this
y'all
is
can
not
stop
in the
listening
script.
at all.
I am
That was
crying. You know what?
hilarious. I love
Children are the
children.
future.
They really are.
Those
The
were
real small ones.
right,
Oh
right.
God,
I
they're
mean,
so
and those were
funny.
real children at the
Yes.
playground at the Obama Presidential Center. You know, Eugene, I've already been to the library. I got a tour
Yeah, she's
last
been
month.
bragging. She's been bragging a lot about her tour.
You know, Sean and I took our
Mhm.
moms and little Sean,
Amazing.
and it was amazing.
One thing, Simone, my question to you as someone who's been there, Jonathan Capehart has been there, so I've talked to him about his
hmm
experience. I'm curious, as a Black person who, for your first president you had access to voting for was a Black man.
Yeah.
You were someone who kind of already always had this like spark of wanting to work in politics and help people. What did it mean to walk into that building? Because you've been to other presidential libraries, but this one, I think for a lot of people, feels different to folks.
Oh, for sure. And you know what? The Obama Foundation, they are actually very intentional about saying this is not just a
Yes.
museum, this is a
It's a
center.
center.
It's a
Exactly.
center. It is all encompassing. Yes, there's a museum component, but there's a library. Again, there's a very fabulous restaurant. There's a very good gift shop. But the thing about the museum, if I can just, it is, especially right now, going
Yeah.
into the Obama Presidential Center, it felt like you were being transported into a different time. You know
Yeah.
how our colleague Nicole Wallace talks about Earth 1 and Earth 2? I felt like I was on Earth
Yes.
3,
Yeah.
where we were thriving, where the president was, more than decent and inspiring and hopeful.
Yeah.
And the museum portion, it reminds me a lot of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I think some of the same
Mhm.
architects and whatnot worked on it.
Yeah.
And the museum portion is organized in that way. So it is really a bottom up
A
experience. You start at the
story.
bottom.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a story. There is this amazing video wall that kind of looks like a waterfall at every
Mm.
level of the museum portion, and it's telling a different story on that video. But like when you're on the second level, you can't hear what's going on the third level. When you're on the third level, you can't hear what's going on the fourth.
I love that. It's giving rich.
Yes, it's giving the donors gay.
Exactly.
Um,
This is a private museum.
Yes.
And so that means that
Yes.
I've heard this a lot from folks as we've gotten closer and closer to the actual date, as folks started seeing that our colleague
Mhm.
Michelle Norris is doing a 2-hour special on Friday about
Cannot
it. But
wait,
you guys, I
okay?
cannot wait. She's talking to both of them, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, I think separately. And you guys are having your show. So people have been asking, like, oh my God, can Trump do anything? He can't. The money came from the foundation, the Obama Foundation. The money was given from lots of people.
Private
And that
dollars.
private dollars. So that is very good. One thing that we had Valerie Jarrett, who's the CEO of the foundation, on the show this past weekend, Simone, and she said to us that they were intentional about how they set this up. And
Mhm.
one thing that they wanted to do was not start with at that bottom part, Barack Obama was born. They wanted to be very clear. He
Mhm.
knows that he's standing on the shoulders of people. So it starts, I think she said, with the Declaration of Independence, and then it goes
Yeah.
into the Civil Rights Movement, because he knows, just like all the people who are going to go there know, that there is no Barack Obama without all of those sacrifices, both politically and personally, of people that came before him. I think one of the things that's some other stuff that's interesting, the Oval Office replica, you can sit down in it.
Mhm. It looks just like the Oval Office, and it is an exact replica of President Obama's specific
Mhm.
Oval Office, because every president can switch it up, as y'all have
Some of
seen.
them look tacky, but this one looks
Well,
very nice. It's very muted. And she said, Valerie Jarrett said to us that she wants people to feel like they too can be in that seat, that they should aspire to more.
mhm.
You'll be able to touch the swatches of the fabrics from some of the iconic dresses worn by Michelle Obama. Like there's just like so much of this that
The
seems so
dresses are in like this
interesting.
encasing.
Yeah.
So you could see some of the iconic outfits, like the Versace chain link
Yeah.
gown,
Oh,
honey.
so good. So
But
good.
there are also things like there have been many things that have been unveiled since I have been there. So like when I was
Yeah.
there, they were still doing construction outside, child. Like there was
They was
pieces still
working.
dug up. I was like, oh, they trying to
Uh-huh.
get ready for the opening. June is around the
Exactly.
corner. So like when I was there, the statues weren't necessarily all up outside. The amazing portrait of the Obamas that was unveiled.
It's gorgeous. It is a gorgeous
Oh my
photo.
gosh. The artist Njideka Akunle Crosby. And it is the first portrait that has been commissioned of the Obamas together. And it is, I'm told,
Those are
it is on the
braids.
first floor.
These are
they
braids. They are 100% braids.
Stop.
That's
I
why I'm
love
so
that.
gagged by it. So, Simone, you are a comms professional. You understand releases, openings, all of these things. I feel like it is a very deliberate choice for this museum
Mhm.
to open in the 250th anniversary of this country. I feel like it is a very deliberate choice, obviously, for them to pick Juneteenth, for them to
Mhm.
open this center. And it is, to me, the Obamas and their team saying, we understand that there is
Mhm.
a people who are trying to dictate what this anniversary of this country means. They're trying to say who gets to celebrate, who gets to be an American.
Mhm.
Here's the counter to that, right? Here's the counter to that in kind of the hope and change of it all that was such a part of those 8 years in this country. The kind of excitement that Black, white, brown, every kind of person, even a lot of Republicans had at the time.
Yeah.
And like you said, it can transport you to somewhere else in a moment when people feel like the world is so heavy. They don't bang you over the head, but it's not like, come hither,
Mhm.
children, this is your home. Like that is not a part of the center. It is the intentionality throughout, from all the floors, the ways in which they turned it into something that you can have events at. I understand. Like you can actually
You
like
can have events
rent
at, but it's a
spaces and
space for the
meetings.
community. It is
Yes,
a real
exactly.
library. The
Yeah.
library that is on the again, when you walk into the campus, the library is to the right. Like you got to walk past the
Yes.
library if you really want to get
Yeah.
into the museum portion.
Yeah.
The library is it's a real
They
library.
said
It's a
open the
part of the
schools, baby. Open the
Come on
schools.
now.
Read,
They're like,
children,
look,
read.
the books they trying to ban, you can find them here.
Right.
And that also means it's a partnership with the city. Okay.
Right.
The Chicago Public Library, I believe
Is
it's the
there.
Barack
Yep.
Obama Chicago Public Library. That is the library that's called on the campus.
Yeah.
And I think you're right that it's not an accident, to be very clear. Like there is a high level of intentionality that has been baked in here because, this could have opened last year. It could have opened
Next year.
this fall. It could have
Mhm.
opened next year, right? But like they chose it for a time such as this. But also I think it's not just a counter to what's happening right now. People have to be reminded in this country, the memory of Americans oftentimes is very short.
Because there's so much
We
stuff
forget.
going on.
Well, that's why people need to read books. People have to be reminded about the things this country has been able to achieve. And as we look towards our, the semi-quincentennial
There we go.
celebration of this country, the 250th, come on now.
I hate whoever taught you how to say that.
Semi-quincentennial, I
You've been
learned how to
saying
say
that
it, so now I'm just going to say it everywhere. I taught myself.
Until July 5th, she's going to be saying that damn word.
Semi-quincentennial celebration. We have to think about how far we have come, but also
Yeah.
how far we still have yet to go on that
Yeah.
path to be a more perfect union, this experiment that is American democracy. And the Obamas and what they represent and what this presidential center represents is an important part of that story. And
Yeah.
at a time when there are people in this country that are trying to change the story that America is attempting to tell about itself, that want to distort facts and history, this is a living, breathing, active, not just monument, but I think a vessel for what is possible in this country. And I am just very excited for it to open. And for a lot of people, Eugene, this is going to be their 250th anniversary celebration. I think
Yeah.
that this is going to feel like a lot of people's July 4th, given what the president is doing. And it is
Yes.
not lost on me, and I know we're going to get into it, but it is not lost on me that this particular week, the week that, the Obama's Presidential Center is opening, is like this week began with some derogatory comments about our forever First Lady, Mrs. Michelle Obama, on the White House lawn during a UFC event that,
Yeah.
frankly, was given white refrigerator. If you know, you
Yes.
know.
To the producers right now, do not play that sound. I think people have seen it. I don't think we should. When people do stuff like this, they want everyone to play it over and over and over again. But what I will say is that the Obamas haven't been in office since January 20th, 2017.
Mhm.
9 years, almost 10 years, right? they wanted to leave and do what all the other presidents and first ladies get to do, which is go ahead and not have to deal with politics, to live the rest of their lives, make some money, you know what I mean? Do the things, get to spend some time with your family. You give a lot in those 8 years. And over and over and over again, people pull them into their BS. People pull them into it by being racist and sexist every single time. And there is no person on this earth who has to take more shots than the Black woman. Sorry, everybody. It's just, it is
Come
every,
on now.
all
What
the
did Malcolm
time.
X say?
The most disrespected person in America is the Black woman.
And that is still true to this day. If you've paid attention to Michelle Obama, how she talks about these things, if you know people that know Michelle Obama, if you've ever met and talked to her yourself, I do not believe that these kinds of things bother her. I think she is above that. But my biggest concern is about the little Black girls who are growing up right now and what they're hearing over and over again about a woman who, to this day, is still the most admired person in this country. But like every time they do the poll, she's at the top, which is why she's not running for office. She wants to keep them numbers.
Across political spectrums.
Correct. And so the little Black girls who watch that and what they hear about how Black women are allowed to be treated. Because to be very clear, up until this day, we're shooting this on Tuesday, June 16th at 11:50 a.m., the White House has not said anything. Dana White, the guy who runs UFC, actually did say something. He actually did say that he didn't like it. But we have not heard anything from the President of the United States, who was sitting there when it happened. We have not seen a statement from the White House denouncing those kinds
Did
of
we
things.
hear from Joe Rogan? Okay,
Yeah,
because all these
I did
people that
not
want
hear from
to
Joe
prop up
Rogan.
Joe Rogan is like, this is what the left needs to be doing. Joe Rogan was the person interviewing this fighter and was there when he said it, and then he himself smirked. America, do not let the White House off the hook here, okay? Because when people were saying things that were rooted in facts about Melania Trump, people were out here having to issue apologies. Folks were having to do walkbacks. The White House was very outraged when it's like, we just talking about the fact that she in the Epstein files. That's just a fact. Like, we don't know what it means, but also things that were being said about Ms. Obama was in fact a lie. And it is a lie that is rooted in a racist trope in this country.
Speak on
You
it.
know, because America had to make up these, gender constructs. So America told itself a long time ago that women are very delicate and they
All
are very
soft.
precious, all soft. And then they had to fix the contradiction because they were asking Black women, to be enslaved and work in the field. And so
Not
they were
really
like, well,
asking.
Black women are strong. So, not even asking. Okay, I'm using
Just to be
asking
fair,
with
yeah.
quotes, y'all. If you get it, you got it. They're like, well, Black women are strong and they're more like men. And so that is where the origins of this racist trope about strong Black women being masculine like and being a man, that's where it really comes from. And so I think knowing your history is also very important, and that's why we just can't let it roll off the back. But Eugene, the Obamas have something that the MAGA universe and that Donald Trump will never have, no matter how much they try to bully society and the world into it. The Obamas have a cultural legitimacy. They are beloved across political spectrums. They are respected. Come on.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump and MAGA will never have that. And I think that bothers them to their core, which is why anytime MAGA gets a platform, they bringing up the Obamas and they bringing up race.
But it's a
okay? Why are
choice
we
to
in
not.
it?
But it is a choice not to have that cultural legitimacy. It is a choice not to try and have that level of respect. The reason that the Obamas have it is because the ways they have comported themselves since he hit that DNC stage in 2004 and gave that speech. Ever since that moment, because they had to, because they are Black in politics.
Come on.
They have
Come
had to
on.
do everything as perfect as possible. And I think there's no bigger difference between humans, I think, in the country and our leadership, and the way they behave than the Obamas and the Trumps. I think it is just like very, very, is like completely different in the ways in which they speak to each other, how the daughters are trying to carve out their own lane on the Obama side and not trying to get into the family business, who we never hear from them because they just want to live their lives and have never wanted to take public advantage of their parents' names, right? Like, I don't know what they're doing behind closed doors, but what they're not doing is out here trying to get jobs in the public sphere, trying to get
Malia doesn't
jobs,
even use.
hotels.
Malia is in movies. She produces movies and short films and whatnot. And she doesn't even use her last name sometimes because she doesn't
Yeah.
want people to associate her with what is going on. So I know we're gonna talk more about the other vantage points of the UFC fight because I know some people that were there. But I think that we both really felt like it was just so important to just revel in the moment that is the opening
Yeah.
of this presidential center, regardless of whoever anybody voted for in any of the past elections, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, or non-political denominational. What our country achieved in November of 2008 is amazing. I know we're going to talk more about the UFC in a little bit, Eugene, but first, can we talk about Juneteenth?
Yeah.
America's 250th birthday, of course, as folks know, as we said, the semi-quincentennial is on the 4th of July. But for about 50 million Black Americans, June 19th, which is Juneteenth, is the most important date in the country's history.
For those who still don't know because you don't read, Juneteenth is a national holiday celebrating the day when the remaining slaves in Galveston, Texas, were finally told about their freedom more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. That is insane.
Very insane. I worked at the White House when Juneteenth became an official federal holiday. There were 2 signing ceremonies that day. Sometimes, depending on what the legislation is, the vice president has the opportunity to sign the legislation. And so it was obviously President Biden, one of my old bosses. He cemented Juneteenth as an official federal holiday. But Vice President Harris, before President Biden signed the final piece of legislation, she signed it first. So there are 2 signatures on this, given, the history there. I mean, the first Black woman to serve as the Vice President of the United States of America, happening to be in office when Juneteenth becomes an official holiday. It's amazing. So that was a really important moment. But it's also kind of crazy because every state does not agree that the day slavery ended for everybody is actually a day worth of celebration, because over a dozen states do not actually recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. States like Arizona, Florida, Hawaii, Indiana, Mississippi, even New Hampshire. Crazy.
Honestly, Hawaii surprises me.
Come on now. Barack Obama is from Hawaii, so what is going on?
I have some questions. I'm going to have to call Governor Josh Green because this was confusing to me.
Governor
Hawaii
Green,
one.
if you could tap in here, what's going on with Juneteenth?
Some questions. That's very interesting. Thank you, producers. And if 2025 was any indication, Trump might want to follow suit and make that a countrywide de-recognition. Remember what he posted on his Truth Social just last year.
Too many non-working holidays in America is costing our country billions of dollars to keep all of these businesses closed. The workers don't want it either. Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every once working day of the year. It must change if we are going to make America great again. Now, he posted this on June 19, 2025. I don't know what he's saying. He also doesn't go to work.
You do know what he's saying. You know
this
exactly
is true.
what he's saying.
He's suggesting that Juneteenth shouldn't be a federal holiday anymore, but he's trying to say it without saying it.
There are 365 days, 366 on a leap year. There are only 11 permanent holidays federally, just to be clear. So there's a lot of damn days in which everyone is working.
Why are they trying to make it seem like Juneteenth is just so extra? What's extra? President's Day. Why we got that day off?
That's a good day. Columbus Day also one.
Columbus Day. The only Christopher I acknowledge is Christopher Wallace. Why we got that day
You
off?
like a Christian Dior as well.
The end of slavery, that's where watch night services come from for people who are spiritual out there, who go to church on New Year's Eve, right? That's because Black people in the South were watching for the midnight, for the time to turn so that slavery could be over. But this idea that people in Galveston, Texas did not know they were free. I have heard a number of historians and whatnot talk about the fact that people heard through the grapevine, just like they heard through the grapevine of things that were happening on plantations across the South, various uprisings while slavery was still active. People did hear through the grapevine, but the system, the state, if you will, of Texas, the municipalities, the people in charge of those governments went through great lengths to ensure that the people in those cities, in their towns, in that state did not know the truth. The people were relying on the government to tell them the truth, and they did not. They lied to them. Frankly, they would have been kept lying if not the government wouldn't have came through riding through.
They
the
would have
Union
been slaves
soldiers.
forever. Because like the thing that I think is so interesting, and the reason I think Juneteenth is so important, not just because it is a recognition of the pain that Black Americans have faced in this country. I think it also is a reminder of how much governments lie. And I think it ties into the moment we live in, which is that we cannot always trust the words of the federal government or the state government or your municipal government, hell, the school boards. And and so you have to keep your eyes open to abuses, right? Because that's what was happening.
Very
Like
much so.
it was a, and not just actual slavery, but the abuse from the state to continue something that the federal government has said was over.
That's why state government matters, honey. Who your governor is, who your mayor is, it matters because some of these governors and mayors were willing to continue the
Sometimes it matters
business
more than
of
who the
chattel slavery.
president is to your everyday life. Like
Well,
sometimes
don't tell people that. This is why they're not voting now. This is why
That
they're
is
not voting
not
now.
why
The president, who the president is, don't affect me. Okay, well, I give you gas. I give you tomatoes being how much?
Okay,
Up.
32%,
Okay, up
honey. Very
32%.
expensive.
Okay, I give
Very
you
expensive.
the chaos that we're experiencing. The president does matter, but I take your point. Juneteenth is actually the story of freedom being enforced.
Yes, because you have
That
to
is what
enforce it.
Juneteenth is. You have to
Yes.
enforce it. Freedom ain't free. And I think a lot of times Juneteenth gets reduced to just some like feel good ending, right? They're like,
A
oh,
cookout.
look at look at what America did. But the Emancipation Proclamation, to be very clear, it was issued January 1st, 1863. Juneteenth commemorates June 19th, 1865. Okay, there is a gap. Okay, that is an enforcement of freedom, and that gap, it matters. And the lesson is, to your point, rights on paper are not the same as rights in practice. And we are
Correct.
literally living that right now. Freedom requires government action. Freedom requires enforcement. Freedom requires people willing to defend the promise. And that is not just history, frankly. That is one of the central tensions right now.
And normal people standing up and saying, I'm not taking this no more.
Come on.
That is what we the people means, right? I think even when I was younger, I just anticipated that it would be taken care of. That somebody, if bad things happen, somebody had to fix it. And the older you get, the more you realize is that the somebody is everybody in the country. Like the somebody is everybody. And I think what we have seen over the last year and a half, even with these No Kings rallies, there was an event this past weekend, is that it really does take the people imbuing both power and strength to their electeds to stand up and make laws and do investigations and to have the checks and balances, and the people telling the banks and the social media sites and the companies and the culture and the movies and TV, the people that make those, what they are willing and not willing to accept. And that is how this country has always worked. It took the people, because let's be very clear, Abraham Lincoln would never have freed the slaves had people not pushed him to do so. One of the reasons, no shade,
he wasn't just a feel-good
no
president,
shade,
okay?
no shade to Abraham Lincoln.
Get
but
into
one of
it.
the
Yes,
reasons
lots
he
of
did
shade,
it,
but we're grateful. Lots
one
of
of the
shade, but
reasons-
grateful.
One of the reasons that he freed the slaves, one of the main reasons, was because he wanted the war over. It wasn't because he loved Black people so much and he just thought we should all be free. I think that was a part of it. But at the top of the list was, how do I end this civil war? Not that that's bad, but that was a part of it. And I think it is the same thing with the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. There is no Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act if those leaders the Black leaders did not push the people who are running the government in both federally and in statewide to actually make good on the promise of this country.
The
And
promise of
so-
Reconstruction, to be very
Exactly.
clear, the
Yeah.
Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were literally just to get us back to where we were during Reconstruction, which is what came after the Emancipation Proclamation. The questions during Reconstruction were like, can Black people vote? Can they own property? Can Black
Well.
people serve on juries? Can Black people hold office? Are Black people protected by the law? Those are the Reconstruction
You
questions.
sound like
and it was the
sound like you could put those questions in today. That was very depressing, actually.
Child,
Can they?
Can they? Well,
Mhm.
the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, which were the answers to those
Mhm.
questions during Reconstruction, those were the most consequential expansions of democracy in American history. Okay.
Right.
And then what came after that was a backlash. Much like how
Mhm.
we just talked about how people felt in 2008 and during the 8 years that Barack Obama occupied the Oval Office, and the excitement that people are feeling right now, that nostalgia on Earth 3.
Yeah.
That's where I'm trying to go back to Earth 3.
Yes.
During
Yes.
that time, I don't think that the people celebrating in 1865, much like how the people who were celebrating in 2008, had no idea how fierce the backlash would become. How
Yeah.
fierce it would become. After 1865, within a generation, Reconstruction collapsed. Voting
Yeah.
rights were stripped away. Racial terror was spreading. Segregation became law. After 2008, a swift backlash came from the Tea Party to the rise
Mhm.
of
It
Donald
was 2
Trump.
years.
To
2
it
years
was
was the Tea Party was
insane.
2010. Like, the
Insane.
every time that there is a movement forward for Black people, or even a symbolic move forward, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be legally, right? No, there weren't like new Black laws that were passed by Congress when Obama was president.
Come
It
on
was just the
now.
idea of Black people gaining more cultural and political relevance. How
Mhm.
dare you think that the rest of y'all can be up here where this man was, right?
Mm.
That was the thing. That's what came back. And that's how you get Donald Trump. We are way off where we're supposed to be. But like it feels to
Yeah,
me like
but it
it's
was
all connected,
good.
Simone. It feels
It
all
is all
connected to
connected.
me.
It is all
Yeah.
connected. And I know we're going to talk about July 4th. We're going to have a separate July 4th episode. And it's just important that we put the marker down for people, because July 4th celebrates the promise of freedom. But it is Juneteenth that actually celebrates the expansion of freedom in this country.
Say that
Okay?
again.
Come on
Say
now.
it again. Say it again.
July
Oh
4th
my God.
celebrates the promise of freedom, but it is Juneteenth that celebrates the expansion of freedom in this country. So one of them is marking the founding ideals, right, of our country, and the other marks the effort of our country to live up to them. So Juneteenth is the effort of our country to live up to the promise that it has made, a promise that it still is working on making good on. Okay?
I love you. The way your brain works, like I have never heard anyone say that. Like that, I have chills. Like that is so
Mm.
that is so important for people to understand how those two things are connected and why Juneteenth matters. Lord Jesus, take us to break.
We are going to take a break right here. When we come back, Eugene's favorite subject, sports. Sports, sports,
Sports!
sports, 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 sports.
So much. I did not want to do a podcast with this woman so we could talk about sports. But here we are. Last weekend, the New York Knickerbockers. Is that their real name?
Yes, that's the real. Oh my
That is
gosh. You don't do sports
crazy.
for real.
I don't like that name at all. I
Yes,
don't-
the New York Knicks.
Knickerbocker. Anyway, the New York Knickerbockers won their first NBA title since we were born. It's been 53 years. Lewis Hamilton won his first Grand Prix with Ferrari. And the World Cup started in North America with the U.S. cruising to a 4-1 victory and Cape Verde
Yay.
holding one of the favorites, Spain, to a draw. And of course, I knew the name Cape Verde without having to do this again.
Exactly. Look at you doing sports. You didn't mention the biggest event, like
That was not
on
an
Sunday.
accident.
Okay.
Not an
Okay. On
accident.
Sunday, folks, the president hosted UFC Freedom 250 on his 80th birthday.
What I say, sometimes silence is an answer, baby.
Oh, goodness, you know. Silence is a
saying.
choice and an answer. Well, it was the first sporting event to ever be hosted at the White House. That is because the White House is the people's house, and it is not a venue or a forum for folks to make money.
And yet,
Yet and still, the Ultimate Fight Championship, White House edition, it had everything you might expect, okay? There was a bald eagle, there was a military flyover, there were fireworks, and there was unapologetic transphobia. There were little men in shorts and blood, and it was crazy.
to the point of the people's house, one of my favorite lines from Scandal is from season 7, episode 1, where Olivia is talking to Mellie, and she calls it her house. She's the president at the time, spoiler. And she says, "It's not your house. This house belongs to the people, to the republic. You lease it for 4 with an option for renewal." I think of that every time I walk near or in the White House, is it does not belong to the president, it belongs to all of you that are listening right now. But this is yet another attempt from Donald Trump to hijack culture. We've been talking about it. There's a reason, really, we started this podcast. The conversation started when we were just talking about how he does that. It doesn't matter that a Reuters Ipsos poll from early June showed that only 16% of Americans found the UFC 250 event appropriate. What matters to Trump more is what he thinks is cool, what he thinks is manly, what he thinks his base thinks is manly, what he thinks his base thinks is cool. And since it was his party, his 80th birthday, 80, Trump hopes people will think he's cool, manly, relatable. But let's be very clear about some things. I will say this. I think that it actually is a perfect metaphor for how this country thinks about masculinity, which is it's aggressive, it has to be in your face, it is violent. It is violent, it is violent, it is violent. Like that's what we think about as the royal we. When we think about men, they have to be being the head of the household isn't just about making the money, it's about protecting your kingdom, right? And the ways in which you protect your kingdom that President Trump has shown us and what UFC shows us is to be violent. But I also think the huge part of it also is as some people would say, as some people have said, as experts have said, the possible corruption that happened. Over
The
and over, Simone.
possible?
I'm just
Why
saying.
do you
I'm
say
still-
possible?
Well,
There was
I'm a
clear. I just
reporter.
want to be very clear. They built this huge structure.
Ugly.
Yes, and it's still up. By the way, as we speak, it is still up. The president says he would like to leave it up. I don't know how that's going to
He
shake
can't.
out.
He has to fly. He has to get on the helicopter, so he can't leave it up. He got to go. He has to go. Where he gonna go? How he gonna fly out?
Well,
Is-
maybe they gonna make another helipad situation. But the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, folks, they actually paid for what happened on the White House lawn, and Donald Trump bought a stake in that company last year, and so he also made money off of this. You can
Tens
only
of
view the
thousands
fight.
of dollars, Simone.
Clock
Tens of
it,
thousands
Eugene.
of dollars worth of stock in the parent company TKO. And we know this not because of any like dogged reporting, it's because it was in his May financial disclosure. Now the White House says and the administration says that Donald Trump does not do his stocks. Somebody else makes the plans and they don't talk to him about it. But I think it is hard to believe that whoever is buying stocks for the president, the fact that they're buying stocks while he's president is crazy. So that's one. It is really important for people to understand the ways in which the Trump folks have just flouted the normal ethics that presidents and the administrations and their families are usually held to.
I would take it a step further. They haven't just flouted the normal ethics. They are literally getting rich off the backs of Americans. Donald Trump is using this presidency. He is pilfering the coffers of our country while folks in this country are having to work 2, 3, 4 jobs. It is wildly expensive to just live a basic life right now. And the president of the United States, he is letting you know very loudly and boldly and forcefully and in your face that he doesn't give a fuck. That he is out here for himself. And so it's not just they're just not flaunting some ethics. He's pilfering the coffers of our country on the backs of Americans. And I don't mind rich people, okay? I myself would like to be a very rich, wealthy person. But at the expense
You are rich.
of
I've been
not
to your
wealthy.
house.
You know, as what did Chris Rock say one time? Shaq is rich. The white man that signs his check is wealthy.
Is wealthy.
Okay?
Exactly.
Wealthy. I'm looking for wealth. Okay, wealth. Let me see what it's like to try to be one of the good billionaires, child. Give me an
Lord
opportunity.
Jesus.
So I think that like that part matters. But obviously, Eugene, there was a lot of consternation about what went down at the White House. And, you know, there are a lot of different people who were there. I know people who attended the UFC fight in their professional capacities. They didn't even post on their social media that they were there. They were there for work purposes. Maybe people who were on the commissions or, you know, someone that was there for work because they had a client. Because, you know, again, the companies were all up and through this thing. But there were some athletes and whatnot who were there. One could argue that it was not necessarily work purposes, but it's in their zeitgeist. There were a lot of boxing stars who were there at the White House. And one of the boxing stars, Bud Crawford, okay? Shout out
That's
to
a
Bud.
country ass name.
Bud is one of Omaha's.
Crawford.
His name is Terrence. Okay. His name is
Country ass
Terrence.
name.
His name is
Bud.
Terrence, but everybody calls him Bud, okay? He
Which is a country way
uh
to operate. I
okay,
can say
well
that. My family from Bucksport, South
okay, you know
Carolina.
what? You would know what country is, okay?
Correct. Proud of
You
it.
you would know what it is. Bud
Shady.
he is retired actually, but he retired with a undefeated record. He won 18 different major world championships in 5 weight classes. He is one of North Omaha's finest, but he was at the White House and he not
Yeah.
only was he at the White House, he took a picture with Donald Trump. We got the picture.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Many
He looks very
people
happy.
had opinions to share in the comments. My Omaha group chats were blowing up about this. And you know, the North Omahans were actually very active on Facebook as well. The Facebook had a lot to say. I think that had Bud went to the event and, you know, posted pictures of himself with the other boxers there and made a comment about how he was, you know, was there, but that it was a connection with like boxing or whatever. I don't think people would have had as much to say. If he made comments about being at, you know, making it all the way to the White House as a, you know, black kid from North Omaha, I think people would be like, okay. But the fact that he made the post with the president, like, where's the PR? But two, in this day and age, people cannot expect to consort and be seen with this president and this administration and not think that there's not going to be any backlash given the things that this president has not only said but what he's doing. And so I understand why people are upset, but then there's a lot of black athletes that are out here defending Bud Crawford and others that were at the White House. And I mean,
I bet
to
they
be clear,
are.
this 2026 version of black athletes, they are not beating the allegations that they are not I'm sorry. They are not beating the allegations that they are not up to the snuff for this moment. They're
There
just
are
not.
some who
There
have
are
some
some,
issues. I
but
can't
writ
name them, but I know
large,
they be out there talking. I think you know what
child,
part of
could
it,
you
Simone,
imagine
is.
during the 60s? Could you imagine
Baby,
during the
no, I could
60s?
not imagine. I could not imagine Muhammad Ali doing this. No, I could not. I think the thing that's so is interesting, and you know, people talk about being red pilled and MAGA coded, and I ain't gonna say their names because I don't want to get them in trouble. But I know people who have voted for Donald Trump, black men who like did it because he feels to them manly, right? The man that has makeup on his hand feels to them very manly, and that he is the man who, according to the wives, not us, cheated on all his wives, got baby mama, all types of baby mamas. And so like I'm not shocked that there are athletes, black, white, and other, who are fine with this moment because also they are rich and frankly or wealthy, and rich and wealthy people are still doing well under Donald Trump's America. They are not worried about gas. They are not worried about where their next meal is coming from. They are not making the decision, as people have said on our shows, whether or not they are going to eat today or buy gas for the week. And so there is such a disconnect for them from the plight and the dangers and the pain that is being dealt by this administration and by Congress, frankly. And instead, they just it's like, okay, well, he seems cool. That's them. You see all of them doing the little dance. His little YMCA dance was the gayest damn song on earth, to be very clear. But like that, like they do that is because they are so disconnected from the everyday lives of the American people. You are unlikely to find the best examples of what it looks like to deal with life in this moment from rich and wealthy people, including people who are athletes, unfortunately. There are people who are doing it, but you are not going to find it across the board.
There are, I mean, I'm thinking about Jalen Hurts, who didn't go
Yeah.
to the White House when the Eagles won, and he didn't make a big to-do about it. He was just like, oh, I have a scheduling conflict. You know,
Which is
there
not-
are...
You know,
I'm thinking-
you've told people there's a scheduling conflict. You
Sure
know what happens
have.
when there's a scheduling conflict.
Baby,
Schedules get changed
there's
all
a
the
scheduling
time.
conflict, okay? We won't be able to
Exactly.
attend. I'm thinking of folks like LeBron James. I'm thinking of
Yes,
people
always. Yeah.
like Colin Kaepernick, right? So there are definitely, and I mean, I can name more names. There are definitely folks, but I will end with this. Joel Anderson, who I have quoted before, he is a writer for The Ringer.
Yeah.
He co-hosts a podcast called the Press Box Podcast.
Yep.
He retweeted or reposted on the site formerly known as Twitter this picture of Bud and the president. And he said, quote, "In the sweep of history, admittedly not all that long, this is likely the most pathetic and most captured generation of Black athletes there's ever been." Now, do I feel like Bud is captured? No, but I do feel
But
like
why not?
you have
because he's a hometown hero?
no, it's not, because I feel like he honestly didn't think that deep into it,
But
which
why
is
do you
part of
think
the
that?
problem. Because I know
that's
him
true
and his
too.
people.
Also,
right?
what's worse, I guess, is it worse to be captured, or is it worse to not be thinking about the influence and power that you have?
It's all at the bottom
when
of the
you're-
barrel, to be very
It's
clear.
all,
It's all at the
exactly.
bottom of the barrel, swimming in the same cesspool. So these
Yes.
athletes, because all athletes haven't held themselves up to be leaders, but Bud Crawford is somebody that has and has literally picked up North Omaha, put the city on his back on a number of occasions. There is a responsibility that you have. You got a responsibility to Google. This is right up there with those entertainers that said, "Oh, we ain't know Freedom 250 was the Trump one, and we thought we was just doing
Fire
the America
the comms
250."
people, honey.
Fire the comms
the
people, but
comms
also
people.
you have a responsibility. Okay, the people put scripts in front of us every day, Eugene, and it's our decision
Yes.
whether what we read or not.
Mhm,
Okay,
that
it's
is
you
very
are
true.
responsible for what comes out of your mouth. You're responsible for what
Exactly.
you decide to participate in. You sure as hell responsible for what you post on your damn Instagram. So
Exactly.
use it as a learning opportunity. We need to get some apologies out here. The athletes need to get a little bit more woker, because when they take us to the gulag, they not gonna care that you dribbled the basketball, or you was the heavyweight champ, or
Mhm.
that you could hit a lot of baseballs. Let's move.
No, it's not going to matter. With that, let's take a break right here. When we come back, Simone's favorite subject, the price of beef, is actually her real favorite subject. She
Yes,
talks about
it
this a
really
lot.
is. While Donald Trump and his little friends, when a Black woman puts a little in front of anything, we are being shady
To be
as hell.
very clear. To be very clear.
But while
This is a
Trump and his
lesson for
little
all of y'all.
friends are living it up at the White House, everyday Americans, they are struggling.
Yeah.
The Consumer Price Index for May, it actually came out last week, and Eugene, the inflation is real. Okay.
Mhm.
I would just like to read some stats to you, if I may.
Yeah, pull out your scroll.
Tomatoes, let me get my scroll.
'Cause a lot of problems.
You said this earlier, but tomatoes are up 32% from where they were last May. Lettuce is up 25% to where it was last May. Jewelry and watches are up 19%. Fresh fish, I'm concerned about. I guess people are getting frozen fish. Well,
Yeah,
fresh
yeah.
fish is up
I'm like, yeah, what is the-
7.4%. Yes. What's the alternative?
Uh-huh.
You want the fish fresh? It's going to cost you 7.4% more than it did last May. Beer, I don't eat beer. I don't drink beer, but
That, clearly.
I just
Me
always
neither.
feel like ladies don't drink beer, so I've
Me-
just never
me-
been a beer
correct.
drinker.
Me
But I
either.
did used to drink Hennessy, so maybe I'm not beating allegations.
I don't think it's a lady thing then, because Hennessy is strong.
I feel like the beer was a lady thing.
Put hair on your chest, drink.
Well, beer is up
Hennessy.
3%. And beef is actually doing a little bit better than it was, Eugene.
Mhm.
It was
up
up 16%. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Since last May, it's now only up 12.9%. What are we supposed to do?
You can't eat
And
salad.
that's just the beer.
The
To be clear,
lettuce
we ain't
high.
even get to the champagne and the wine.
The lettuce high, the tomato high,
Can't have a cookout.
at all. And the thing that is not happening as all those numbers rise, Simone, is
Mhm.
people's wages. And so they're still dealing with the same amount of money that they were dealing with when the numbers were where they were, which were already too high to begin with.
Such a good
And
point.
there's a choice from the companies who sell these things, whether or not they're going to take these prices on, right? And they are not. They are passing that price along to the consumer. And a lot of that has to do with Trump's tariffs. There are all these reasons why, right? It's because the fertilizer,
Mhm.
getting the fertilizer is harder because it's more expensive because of oil prices, and fertilizer comes to the Strait of Hormuz, so maybe they'll go down at some point if that issue gets resolved. But here's the other thing. No matter what's in the memorandum of understanding that Iran and the administration say they're going to do, prices
Because you
will
mentioned
not
the Strait of
fall
Hormuz.
Okay? The prices will not be falling like a rock, as Trump has said on more than one occasion. It will take months. And that's not me, that's experts, CEOs
Mhm.
of oil companies who seem distressed themselves, who are like, this is bad, y'all. They have apparently, according to reports, called the White House and told them that this is going to be an issue they're going to be dealing with for a long time.
Mm.
Folks within the White House who go out in front of cameras and say things are going to be great, they also eventually get pretty honest, other than Donald Trump, that like the prices will take a little while to get back to normal. But the relief at the pump is going to take a long time. The price to ensure those ships moving through the strait has to go down first. MarketWatch spoke to somebody who runs a supply chain consultancy, and he said it will take 3 to 6 months of incident-free transit at scale before insurers will believe this peace deal is real. Not like 30 ships through the strait every day unscathed, 100 ships through with no problem. That's what we're talking about here.
Exactly. I mean, well, TikTok, Mr. President, the midterms are coming.
He don't seem to
They're on their
care.
way. But this is why, like, this whole thing about, you know, a lot of people like to talk about the markets, right? But the
Mhm.
markets are one thing. People's everyday lived experiences at the pump, at the grocery store, is another. And the everyday costs are not rising and falling based on what the markets are doing. And I think that's part of the issue for folks. So I know that the president's talking about, oh, now they got a deal. Again, as Eugene and I said, they signed it. They did a fancy signing ceremony to say, we're going to keep talking.
Mhm.
This is like somebody being like, we're about to get married, and they literally do a whole production just to sign a piece of paper that says, I promise to go to therapy to talk about getting married to you.
No. That is 100% correct, because at the end of the day, Donald Trump is looking for a win here.
Yeah.
And the problem with the war in Iran, and it would have been the problem for any president, frankly, who would have decided to go to war with Iran, was
Mhm.
that
Which is why I know
one
the
of
president did.
Hello, there are many reasons they didn't do that. Part of that is because of the Strait of Hormuz, and they did not want to deal with the consequences of that. And Donald Trump seemed a little shocked that the Strait of Hormuz caused such an issue as it has. I don't know why, because everybody who has dealt with this. So, like, administrations, every department, every agency has all these like contingency plans. And so if there's a war, right, the Defense Department has all these like, this is how you could do the war, sir. And also this is the impact of the war. And the State Department has things like that as well. And
Yep.
I've talked to people who put those lists together, who put those plans together, and they were like, yeah, the Strait of Hormuz is on there. So they have the information. Whether or not they used it is another thing. And I think the thing that's so interesting to me, Simone, is every single time that Donald Trump talks about the Iranian war, every single time he talks about it in the vein of the midterms, he seems to not understand that if there's one person on earth who should care how these midterms shake out, it is Donald J. Trump, because he is the person, his family, the allies are the people who are going to his administration. They are the folks who are going to be getting investigated on January 3rd, 2027, if Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker. That's who should care the most.
Maybe
And
he
when you
knows
talk to
something we don't
Republicans-
know. Maybe they feel like they're not gonna lose in the midterms because he's doing everything he can to try to rig the elections and exert authority over our electoral process when he has none.
We ain't gonna talk about it now because we don't have time. But if you want to understand what Simone's talking about, the next iteration of that, Google the USPS and the proposal that they put out to not allow. So you get sent a mail-in ballot. I'm gonna talk about it. You get sent a mail-in ballot. Before you get the mail-in ballot, that goes to the USPS. The USPS put forward a proposal.
The
that basically
USPS is the
says-
United States Postal Service.
Postal Service, the people that come give you your mail. Not Amazon, baby. The USPS has basically proposed that unless someone proves to the USPS, who's not supposed to be involved in voting in our elections at all, because it's not federal, it is statewide that runs our elections, that you are who you say you are, then they won't send it out. So they will just stop it. And so that means are they opening your mail? Are they checking the mail in what ways, or which are they supposed to find out that you are who you say you are? That is not their duty. And so that's what Simone is talking about. The next aspect of that, because that is one of the slick ass ways that they would do that, right? That is something that people won't see. Right, like, because you don't know if you got the mail or not. You're not supposed to go get the mail or not.
Correct. They as in the U.S. Postal Service, they drafted new rules to adhere to an executive order that Donald Trump put out earlier this spring. And the rules under the proposal, states will be required to provide the United States Postal Service with lists of every voter set to receive a mail ballot, and states that don't meet the requirements can see their ballots blocked from delivery. You should not.
That's crazy.
States should not have to turn over a list of their voters to the U.S.
anybody.
Postal Service
To
or the
anybody.
government. Like, that's insane. They trying to steal the election. We digress. The celebrities, Eugene, what are they doing?
Well, we were supposed to talk about the sort of famous people that were at the UFC event, but the list was boring, so I skipped it. The people that were there were like, not that. Some of them I had no idea who the hell they are. But there are some people, some international, some cross-generational, famous people who are taking principled stands against the behavior of this administration. Did you, Simone? You saw the Ariana Grande video. You saw what she said in the TikTok comments last
I was like,
week.
come on, Ariana.
Now, for the people who didn't see the White House's account, posted this video, and this is Ariana's song "Bye" over it. Listen to this. So Glenda looked at it and commented, quote, "Please do not use my music in relation to this barbaric, inhumane, heinous nonsense, FCK ICE." And after that, the video was muted and her comment was deleted. Now, I think that it is kind of disgusting to see
part?
any administration use videos of people getting arrested who haven't gone through the full aspect of our justice system, right? They could not be guilty of what the administration says they're guilty of being. They could be citizens. They could have a green card. They could have some kind of refugee status. We don't know. But them getting arrested and then using pretty little songs on it to try to sanitize the mass deportation efforts that are happening in this country, who, not my opinion, that the American people say they disagree with.
I think it's insane. I'm glad Ariana Grande spoke up, because you're right. The administration is trying to sanitize what it is doing, trying to make it par for the course, if you will, just one of the regular run-of-the-mill things that happen. Olivia Rodrigo also spoke up against her music being used. So did Adele, Sabrina Carpenter, SZA, ABBA,
Come on, ABBA.
Neil Young. Even Radiohead, they all
The
told
youngs
administration
and the
to
olds,
stop.
the rock and the pop, everybody.
The rock and the pop and the R&B.
Everybody.
But you know, Eugene, who we haven't heard from are Drake or even Taylor Swift, when the White House accounts have used their music or album covers.
I'm just saying silence is an answer. I don't care, Swifties. Like, I don't care. You know, like at the end of the day, if you are watching what's happening in this country, and I do not think that every single celebrity has to speak out on every single thing that happens. But if they pull you into it, they are saying to the world, this music, this person, implying that this person endorses what's happening. And if you leave
and if you
that
don't,
out
you should say something about it.
And if you exactly, and so I can only. What am I supposed to guess? What am I supposed to assume if they don't do it?
Kendrick would never. Kendrick would never. Kendrick would have spoke up. Oh, you know who also spoke up? Nicki Minaj. And she said thank you. She said thank you to the White House for using her music. And then she ended up at the UN. And then she ended up at the White House holding hands with Trump. So, like, speaking in agreement is also a choice. And y'all do with that what you will. You said the point about the celebrities, that all celebrities don't have to speak up on everything.
Yeah.
And I found it very interesting that the same day as Donald Trump's little birthday party on the White House lawn, Jane Fonda put on an event in New York.
Baby, Jane Fonda been about that life forever.
Hasn't she? And also, she looks phenomenal.
Hanoi Jane. Y'all got to look it up, because during Vietnam, she had a lot of problems with what was going on in Vietnam. The woman has been on the ground for a very long time. Very long time.
And she looks good doing it.
It looks very good.
Okay, snatch. She looks her age, but also flawless. I love it.
Yes, yes. It's like, this is an old woman. This woman in her 70s or 80s. But damn,
I would argue Jane Fonda is very well seasoned. Not old.
A word by any name would smell as sweet, or whatever the hell the Romeo and Juliet thing said. A
I'm
distinction
moving
without
on.
a difference. Tomato,
Last-
potato.
Last October, Jane Fonda
Yeah.
announced that she was going to reform this group called the Committee for the First Amendment. Now, the original group was actually started in 1947. This was during the McCarthy era when they were just, snatching people up, making up things about folks, and the government was investigating people, calling them communists and all that other stuff. Okay, so that was
'Cause
the
they were
McCarthy
gay.
area. Well, it was made up of people like Lucille Ball, the original folks of this, Judy Garland, Frank Sinatra, and Jane Fonda's daddy, Henry. The new
Not
committee for the
daddy.
First Amendment, yes, her daddy. Okay, Eugene, but this new committee for the First Amendment, it includes people like Tessa Thompson and
Love.
Iowa Debris.
Love.
And I think we should talk for a second about what they had to say on stage last weekend. The first person is Miss Thompson, and she was talking about how she had been in the streets of LA for George Floyd, and then she had to go back out there for Alex Pretty and Renee Good. Listen to this.
And again, I was filled with despair and rage. But what was most heartbreaking and most enraging at the time about the murders was how unsurprising they were to me. As a Black American, there is a kind of bone-tired exhaustion in fighting the battles that we have fought so many times before. In insisting time and time again, generation after generation, that people have the right to exist, even if they speak out against the state.
Very good.
Is your
Speak on
fave?
it.
Is your fave speaking up? Okay, that's
Probably
the question.
not.
Well, the other one I want to play for you is Io. She was on stage with Jane Fonda, and she was introing the different ways that people can get involved with the group. And then she started improvising, it felt like, and it was just so good. Take a listen.
I've been here, I've been watching this whole night, and this is kind of going off script. But I was just thinking about myself as a political body, as a young queer Black woman, but also just as a human being. We're all humans in this space, and moments like these can feel insurmountable. They can make us feel like our voices don't matter, or you're like, what voice do I have? Because I don't sound as good as half of the people who've been singing tonight. But that's wrong. It's a lie. And the powers that be know it. That's why they are actively trying to take away our right to vote, a right that people have died for. Moments like these, they can't feel futile. We can't let that happen to us. And there are a bunch of great initiatives.
Right?
Come on now. Come
Right?
on now. And I think that, it is so important. We have talked about this on this podcast. Auntie Rachel and us have talked about it. It's it is so important for people to feel like they have agency. And I think anybody who has a platform should be trying to and cares about what happens in this country, which should be everybody, but maybe they don't. They should be trying to find ways to give people agency and to help them understand how to use that agency, because it does feel like at times that resistance is futile, but it's not. And that's what they
It
want
is
you to
not.
think.
Trump's name is off the Kennedy Center because resistance is not futile, because somebody filed a lawsuit that somebody was Joyce Beatty,
Say her
Congresswoman
name,
out of
ma'am.
Ohio.
Yes.
She spoke up, spoke out, did not take no for an answer. And now Trump's name is off the Kennedy Center. So shout out to Tessa Thompson. Shout out to Io. Two artists, right, who didn't have to speak up and speak out, whose art was not invoked in this moment, but they have consistently decided to use their platforms anyway. I remember Tessa from when I worked for Bernie Sanders. She was on a panel with us way back when in 2015, 2016. So, keep hope alive, as the late, great Reverend Jesse Jackson would say.
Once again, women leading because the men are a mess. Well, let's end it there.
I love the men. Eugene always wants to rag on the men. But
I love the men.
I love the men.
But the men need to do better. Do they not? Do we not? Do we not need to do
well,
better?
I think there's always room for you all to improve.
Okay, yes, correct. A lot of room. Sometimes there's more room
Amazing.
than others, yes.
Well, we're all a work in progress, Eugene. We're all a work in
Correct.
progress.
Some of us working very slow,
Well,
snail's pace, child.
what's not a work in progress is this podcast. So
No. It's
thank you all
done.
for listening.